I'm David Bilger, Principal Trumpet of the Philadelphia Orchestra. I'm here today to talk to you about mutes. Now that might not be as exciting a topic as how to play a great high C in Zarathustra. Now I have to admit I have over 100 mutes in my collection. Most of them live in shopping bags in my basement. What I'd really like to talk to you about today are the ones that live in my bag, the ones that are take on stage, the ones that I play on every day. And they happen to have one thing in common, and that is that they're all made by TrumCor. Now, I'm not a paid spokesperson for TrumCor. I'm just somebody who loves these mutes. So there are really three reasons why I love these mutes. The first is intonation. They play really well in tune, and that goes for whether it's my favorite straight mute or the Harmon mute. I find myself having to adjust a lot less with tuning slides than I do for other brands of mutes. And then once the horn is in tune with the mute, the scales line up. And this makes such a huge difference. The second reason that I love these mutes is the sound. And you're saying, well, but there's a ton of mutes. Well, there are. TrumCor also makes a ton of mutes. So just in metal straight mutes, they have three different kind of metal mutes. They have the lyric mute, which is a great soft straight mute. They have piccolo trumpet mutes. They have mutes for E-flat trumpet that fits specially in the bell. And for those of you who play in a brass quintet or play in a brass band, those are really wonderful choices. There are flugelhorn mutes. There are practice mutes. There's a little bit of everything. And they all share that same characteristic of creating a really wonderful sound. And then the third characteristic that I look for in a mute, that also is the reason that I love these TrumCor mutes, is the resistance. Because if a mute is blowing back at you, it's really hard to make the kind of sound that you want out of the mute. It makes your technique fall apart. And to be honest, it's really what the playability is about. And so having those three characteristics is what makes me want to play TrumCor mutes. Now, with the vast assortment of mutes that I've described, I'm not going to go into each one today. What I want to focus on is what I call the essential mutes, the ones that live in my gig bag. And that's a couple of different straight mutes. It's the zinger mute. It's this bad boy, which sounds a lot like the old solo tune mutes. It's the piccolo trumpet mute and the cup mute, of which there are several kinds, but I love the sound of this one with the big bowl. And in focusing on these mutes, what I'd like to do is to talk a little bit about what makes them special and play a little bit for you so you can get a chance to understand what these mutes sound like. So let's start with the one that we use the most often, which is the straight mute, metal straight. Now this is a well-loved mute. It's got a dent or two, which I don't want TrumCor to know about, so don't tell them. But it makes a sound that is powerful and projecting. For me, it feels almost like there's no mute in the bell. It's so open. And it's great for projecting, playing loud things like the opening of Pines of Rome, something where you really want to get that sound to jump. And I tend to use this one the most, but I will use the all aluminum version of it when I want to have something that's a brighter sound and a little bit more buzz. And but this is my go-to mute. This is the one that I use all the time for straight mute. The lyric mute, and this is a much softer mute, is the one that I use for softer excerpts like Debussy Fête, or for Bolero, or for anytime you need something where there's more cover in the sound, the opening of La Mer where you're blending with the English horn. So anytime where you want a softer, rounder sound, but it still needs to be muted, or something that needs to be especially soft, the lyric mute is a great go-to. I think it's really aptly named because it does make a lyrical yet muted sound. And it's just a wonderful mute all around. The piccolo trumpet mutes are also really terrific. And this one here is the one I use in the orchestra because it holds the sound together really well for things like The Rite of Spring or Samuel Goldenberg and Schmuel from Pictures at an Exhibition. The kinds of excerpts that have that penetrating sound on a piccolo. Now, most of the time when you're playing muted piccolo trumpet, it really has to do with getting buzz and projection. And this mute holds together so well for that. The all aluminum version, which I also have, is one that I would use for lighter playing if I'm playing muted things in a brass quintet, or sometimes in new music when it's calling for just a sound that's more covered on the mute, but it's still a piccolo straight mute. I'll pull that one out. And they're really, again, wonderfully in tune, and they make such a great sound. The zinger mute comes in 3 different varieties. And this one here, first of all, I love the look of it. It's a little Darth Vader, all black. It makes such a great classic wah-wah mute sound. This one is a little less heavy than the all copper version, which is really stable, and it's really great for low playing. But this is a great all-around mute. And then there's the Doc Severinsen version, which I'm just not cool enough to own because it's got such great colors on the mute. But I love this. I love this mute, and it's great to use for jazz. It's great to use for things like American in Paris, and it's really used well in new music as well when it calls for that buzzy sound or when you've got the wah-wah effects. And it plays equally well with the stem in all the way, out and removed. So it sort of works in every way possible. Great mute to have, and again, it's one of my essential mutes because you're always needing to have a zinger mute. Another mute that I consider essential is this, the vintage mute. And the vintage mute is a great old-fashioned sound that works great for movie soundtracks, things like Up, which has all of that old-time sound that would have back in the day been played on a solo tone mute. And this holds together so well, and the pitch is great on it, and so you can really get around on it. Other people find great uses for it in solo playing, sometimes using it in place of a cup mute for just a little bit different kind of a sound. It's a very personal mute, and I love the fact that you can color it in so many different ways. Another essential mute for me is the cup mute. We use those a lot. And of course we have the classical cup, which is very similar to the sound that we're used to in a cup mute. But then there is this one, which I find it incredibly special, which is a metal cup mute with a large bowl on the end. And TrumCor makes 2 different bowls to go on the end, one bigger one slightly smaller for this metal mute. And so you have you can adjust the color that you want to make. Also, because the end of the cup moves in and out, you can adjust the distance from the bell, and that is a great way to adjust how much cover or how much projection you get in the mute. So for cups, there are a lot of choices. You can choose the more traditional sound, or you can use this sound that's just incredibly special. And I love this mute also for solo playing. It's really wonderful to bring that kind of a unique sound into things like the opening of the Tomasi Concerto or the second slow section in the Artunian Concerto. Great options here. The last category of mutes that I'd like to talk to you about today are the stealth mutes, which, as you can guess by the name, are whisper mutes. They're for practice and also for playing repertoire that's required to be extra soft. The first one that is one of my go-tos is this little piccolo stealth mute, which, if you've ever been on a church job where you're up in a balcony and it's cold and you've been sitting for 20 or 30 minutes and then you've got to play some high piccolo obligatos, it's great to pop this in the bell, be able to test a few notes, get your chops back buzzing, and reacquaint yourself with the piccolo. It's an absolutely essential part of your gig kit. This stealth mute is for the big trumpet, and it basically is an awesome practice mute. It knocks down the sound so far that you can get away with practicing in hotel rooms. You can practice pretty much anywhere, or if you're in a place where you need to be warming up backstage when there's a lot going on the stage and you can't really play open, it's a really wonderful option for that as well. What's really unique about TrumCor is the fact that they have yet a third stealth mute, which is the lyric stealth, which I find to be a really fascinating mute, because what I've found is there are many modern composers who actually write now for a practice mute, for in the parts. And in some ways, if you were to use this mute, it would really be inaudible. So this gives you the color of a practice mute, but it projects just enough that you don't have to work so hard to be heard. And it's another invaluable tool that we have in our collection. Now, as I said, there's flugelhorn mutes, there's E-flat mutes, bucket mutes, all sorts of other variations. And I would encourage you to go to the TrumCor website and have a look at all of the mutes they have to offer. And take them for a test drive. Audition these mutes and see if you don't agree with me that they have the right blend of intonation, resistance, and most of all, that special sound. So thanks for listening today, and I hope that I see you guys in the audience or make music with you on stage sometime soon.